All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code podcast5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Be Well by Kelly podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Amy Shah. She is a double board certified MD with training from Cornell, Columbia, and Harvard University. She was named one of MindBodyGreen's top 100 women in wellness to watch in 2015 and has been a guest on many national and local media shows. She is a busy MD who focuses on gut health, inflammation, and intermittent fasting. So today we're going to go through her tips in each one of those categories. It is such a pleasure to have her on the show. So welcome, Dr. Shah.
Thanks so much, Kelly. So excited to be here.
Oh, well, I feel like you're probably really busy. I've seen on your Instagram, you're putting out a lot of information regarding the coronavirus, and I'm sure that's really changed your life a lot right now. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I think as a physician with my immunology background and my nutrition, immunology, and medical background, I feel like it's my duty to kind of speak on these issues because there's so much confusion out there.
Yeah, I feel like every single time I dive into articles on the internet or I'm jumping onto the news, it's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's a changing situation. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are using this opportunity to kind of talk about cures and miracle things. I think that's what's confusing to people. Like, okay, should we believe this or should we believe that?
With your background, what advice do you have for people out there other than staying inside and washing their hands?
Yeah, I think that, remember, Kelly, it's not just about, and you know more than anyone, it's not just about avoiding the virus, which we are actively doing here in the US and all over the world. It's also about building a better terrain yourself so you can fight it off. Your army, your immune army can fight this virus off. As we know, there's mild, moderate, and severe consequences to this virus, and it seems to be based on your overall health. So if your gut health is in check, if you're doing a good job with your sleep and stress, if you're following some of the self-care guidelines that you've given to yourself, chances are you'll do better than if you weren't following those guidelines.
So since you just touched on it, let's jump right in. How can someone determine if they have a healthy gut microbiome, and what steps can they do to cultivate that health for the long run?
I think that we have to understand that no matter how much testing is available, currently there is no gold standard for knowing that you have a healthy microbiome. For example, you and I can have completely different bacterial makeups in our gut, but we can both be super healthy and live healthy lives. So that's really confusing because I think a lot of people think that there must be a way to check besides just the self-check that you have. Like, are you having a bowel movement daily? Are you experiencing bloating less than 3 times a week? You shouldn't have bloating on a daily basis and constantly, and you shouldn't be constipated for more than 3 days at a time. And those are great, really quick checks. But then there's also other things. It doesn't just affect your gastrointestinal symptoms. It also affects like the way you think, like brain fog and fatigue, and it affects your immune system, like a low immune system, low immunity, which is so important at this time. It can also be weight gain and metabolism issues and diabetes. So there's a multitude of different things that our microbiome affects. It's not just the digestive system. But I would say that if you have any of those signs, so GI symptoms, brain symptoms, metabolic and hormonal symptoms, that could be a sign that your microbiome is off.
So with your patients and your practice, are you really looking for those physical signs versus doing any stool testing? Or are you stool testing as well?
I think that stool testings are often not helpful. I'll be honest. And because we put a lot of weight on testing in our society, like, okay, if you have normal testing, you're fine. And if you have, but with microbiome testing, like I said to you, it's so complex. You could even have some of the bacteria that somebody else has, but have different outcomes based on the rest of your terrain. So what I do is use it as one piece of data, but really it's a matter of watching, listening to your body and seeing if your symptoms are getting better. So for example, one of the biggest ways to check if you're doing okay on the microbiome front is that your energy levels are good. Your hormones are balanced. You have regular stools and your GI system is working well, meaning constipation and diarrhea are not happening to you on a regular basis. So I think that those are good check-ins rather than the stool test.
Great. So let's say you had a client come to you and he or she was dealing with chronic constipation or diarrhea. What steps are you taking to identify the culprits of that, or what advice are you giving those patients?
Yes. So first things first, we want to make sure that there's no actual infection there. You want to make sure that they have gotten a great GI workup to make sure that everything, there's no big kind of bacterial or viral or fungal infections that are noted. So that being said, as I noted to you, there's plenty of people, probably the majority of people who come to me are people who've already had that workup done, and make sure that there's no obvious pathogen in there. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we start to look at things like diet. We start to look at things like lifestyle. We start to look at things, look at tools such as like intermittent fasting, look at tools such as, supplements and things like that to add and subtract to the routine.
Yeah, you're definitely an MD who's known for looking at the whole person, including how they're sleeping, their activity levels, using tools like intermittent fasting, which I love that you're calling it a tool, because that's what I preach with my clients as well, is just how can they add things? And it's about adding and nourishing versus depriving and stripping away. And I think intermittent fasting is a really helpful tool. There is a lot of information out there, though, about intermittent fasting not being the best tool for women. But I've seen you use it with women. So I'd love for you to give your advice and the advice you might have for women when it comes to intermittent fasting. How would they know if they're the right type of person to use intermittent fasting, and how should they do it?
That's such an amazing question, Kelly, because I know that you work with so many women who struggle with intermittent fasting, and I have too. And I myself, actually, the first few times I started to do intermittent fasting, because I read all the research and I said, wow, this is something I really have to add to my regimen. And what I did is what most women do wrong, is that I jumped right in. I thought, okay, if 16 hours is good, 18 hours is better, I can do this every day. And what happens with women is we're very, very sensitive to starvation and to stress on our bodies in that way. Our bodies are wired to detect starvation and nutrition deficiencies very, very, it's very sensitive to that, because we think, we were wired to carry children, and women will see that their periods are off, or they miss their period, or they're having other issues with their cycle due to intermittent fasting. And what that's a sign that this is too stressful to your body. I tell women, I said, if there's a change to your cycle, that's a feedback signal from your body that this is either not for you, too aggressive for you. There's something off there. And so what I did is what a lot of people do, is I jumped right into it. I was very aggressive because I wanted to be an A+ student. And
there's the MD in you right there.
Yeah, right. Like,
overachiever.
Like, this is so cool. Like, and what happened is I desperately failed. I literally, by day 3, I was already feeling fatigued. I was already feeling like my cravings were off. I couldn't sleep well. I couldn't exercise well. And I was pushing through it to the point where I was not functioning. And so after about a week of this, I quit and I said, there's something off here. And when I speak to women, often I hear that story, that they did it aggressively because they wanted to see the results and feel good about around it. But they noticed that it started to impact their energy. It started to impact their focus, their cravings, and often it can impact their cycle. And so I always say those are good ways to check in on your sleep, check in on your cravings, check in on your cycle. If those things are off, you're probably going too hard. So that's my explanation of what happens with a lot of women. Now, there are often women, a small minority, but there are definitely women who can do this and who can do this for long periods of time and come to me and say, well, why should I stop if I'm feeling good? And my answer to them is, if you're feeling good, your energy levels are great, your cycles are in check, your cravings are in check, then go for it. I'm not blanketing every single woman in the world to kind of take it slow. So my advice for women is to go really low and slow and let the body and the hormones acclimate. So for example, what I like to do is circadian fasting. Circadian fasting means take the body's natural predilection towards circadian rhythms and use that to your advantage. Meaning you may start fasting after dinner, and you may not eat another snack so you stop dinner at 7 p.m. and you may not eat again until 7 a.m. And set 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., just 12 hours. 12 hours of a break is even enough to start getting all the benefits of intermittent fasting and time-restricted feeding. So what you start to do is you start to lower those insulin levels. You start to optimize that those GI cells, because those cells in your stomach and intestine, they need a time to clean up and get reset for the day as well. If there's constantly food coming in, it's kind of like saying when you have guests constantly and you never will get a chance to do a deep cleaning or clean up your kitchen because you're constantly entertaining. So time-restricted feeding will give you that. So start with 12 hours a day and then get used to that. And then a couple of days a week, I would say 2 to 3 days a week, you can push it to a little bit longer. What a little bit longer can mean 14 or 16 hours for most women.
You know what? I love circadian synced intermittent fasting. I'm a huge fan of a breakfast at 9 or 10 in the morning and dinner at 5 or 6 at night. I feel like that, and I never restrict or deprive. I'm looking to have 3 meals in that period of time, and to feel full and satisfied, which, I mean, in my personal experience and working with clients, it seems to work the best. There isn't this white knuckling until 2 or 3 in the afternoon. It isn't it isn't the use of excess caffeine and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing is that, the circadian rhythm science is so strong and it's coming out every single day how there's a clock in each one of our cells, not just our brain, right? And so we know that our bodies are actually wired to take a break from food during dark hours. And I agree with you that white knuckling it late into the day is usually not optimal for most people. What people end up doing is they end up overeating once they start to eat, and then they have trouble curtailing that window to 7 or 8 p.m. because their cravings and their energy is so low.
Right. Trying to make up for it.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have when it comes to eating in the circadian window? What foods do you recommend that your clients eat? What for gut health, for inflammation? I know these are your specialties. So what lifestyle do you recommend the most? And how do you optimize someone's gut health?
Well, I mean, I know you're an expert on this, and I think we can agree that eating between the hours of basically 12 and 5, meaning, having as many calories of your day between the hours of 12 and 5 is always optimal so that you can have a light breakfast, and then a dinner, but eating kind of a bigger lunch is what I like. And I recommend to people. And I also recommend a really plant-heavy diet. And what that means is, 85% of your calories should come, or your diet should be really pure, unprocessed, plant-based foods, and primarily vegetables. Like I like to say that at every meal, you should be having vegetables. Vegetables, as you know, have prebiotic fiber, and prebiotic fiber is actually the food to grow the good gut bacteria. So it's like you're selectively feeding those good gut bacteria that are going to help you with metabolism, going to help you with hormone balance. They're going to help get you the right vitamins from your foods, and they're going to help you fight pathogens. And those bacteria need that plant fiber to be able to grow.
Do you have favorites for supporting those processes? Favorite vegetables that you always go to or lean on?
I think that it should be varied as much as possible. I personally love broccoli and cauliflower. I love the cruciferous vegetables, but I also love leafy greens such as spinach and kale. And I think that the onions and garlic are a great source of prebiotic fiber. Leeks, asparagus are great sources. But I don't say that you should limit it to any particular vegetables, because I think we have good evidence that the more diverse your choice of vegetables, the better food it is for your gut. So they found that, in the guts of people from thousands of years ago, they actually had a very diverse set of bacteria. And they think it's because they were eating all this diverse sets of vegetables because of seasonality, just different availability of different strains of vegetables. And we now are very narrow in the type of bacteria that we have in our gut. So the more you can get and the more varied you can get, you should do. So that's why it's really great to go farmers markets and get seasonal vegetables and try something new, because all of that can help.
So how do you keep the variety on your plate and on your, with your family members as well? What tools and how are you taking care of yourself and your family? Do you meal prep? What are you doing to make sure that, especially with a busy job like yours, you're taking good care of yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like behind the scenes questions. Yeah. Like I often do like what I eat in a day kind of post, because I think people need to know, like, I am not someone who has hours and hours to prep my meals. And I'm lucky to have a little bit of help in chopping and things like that. But honestly, it's super, super easy. What I do is I try to keep a routine of having 2 plant-based meals, meaning plant-heavy meals a day. So that means that there's like 2 salads or 2 soups or 2 scrambles or 2 stir fries, something that is just full of vegetables twice a day. And then I also have it as snacks. So something, I'll give you a typical day.
I love that.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite question.
Yeah, totally. And just like you, I'm a big fan of the 9 to 5 eating. So I think that if you can end your meals around 6 p.m., that's ideal, or even earlier on some days. So I basically start my day usually with a tea, an almond milk tea, and I will take that to work with me, and that will be the start of my the end of my fast, I guess I would say. So I'd start that at 9 a.m. And usually that's after a fasted workout. So 8:30 or 9, I start to eat with a tea, and then I'll have nuts and berries. Because what happened to me is, I think what happens to a lot of people, I did smoothies for a really, really long time, and then I just needed a break. Like I wanted to have a deconstructed smoothie. So I have my nuts, and I have my berries, and I have my tea, and then I will just start with that, because I think that for most days, I can do that. Sometimes I'll have a chia seed pudding, or I'll have a smoothie with plant-based protein if I'm really hungry, especially if I did a really hard workout. I like to replace protein within an hour of my workout. So then usually at lunch, it's just a salad or a soup or a stir fry, something plant-based, with a few chips along with it. And I like to snack on nuts or an apple at work, so I might have something like that. And then dinner, again, I'll have one of our go-tos is kind of like a Mexican fiesta. Everybody kind of puts in their salad and their beans and their veggies, the grilled veggies, and and you can put some salsa. And so you get a whole bunch of different vegetables. You get black beans, you get, and then and I might have it with a handful of corn chips or something like that. And then I'll usually have dark chocolate right before I start my daily fast. And I usually do 12 hours on 3 days a week. And then I do a little longer on 3 days a week. And then 1 day a week is completely off.
Meaning you're completely fasted, or meaning you don't have restricted hours?
I don't have any kind of pre-planned restrictions, or it's just kind of like give myself a mental break from any of it. And that's a nice way for people, if you're trying this, is it's a nice time to kind of have a social dinner with friends and not have to worry about like, oh my God, this is past 6 or 7 o'clock. Like I can't, I'm not supposed to be here, or just sit there and not have anything. I think the social aspect of time restricted eating or circadian fasting can be difficult for people. So it's nice to have 1 day where you're just like, I'm just going to do what I want to do, and maybe have that social gathering and eat there.
Yeah, I think flexibility is really important, especially with fasting, because you do want to still connect with friends and family. I mean, obviously we're in a time right now where we're all at home, but but being able to still connect with people and have a flexible day, I think also probably remotivates you when it's time to get back in.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing, is that it keeps you motivated, because you know that there's always a break, and there's always a time to be social, and then you can time that day off as you please, right? And I think people usually realize that they don't need more than one day like that. The rest of the days you can kind of like work around it.
Absolutely. So when it comes to fasting and inflammation levels, have you seen fasting directly lower inflammation levels in your patients?
Oh, absolutely. Fasting, if we do it the circadian style, people will automatically in 2 weeks, Kelly will say, all of a sudden I feel like I have more energy, I'm sleeping better, I'm lighter. So you'll automatically know that you're feeling better. We don't realize how much snacking we do late at night and how lethargic it makes you feel the next day. And so just taking that out is a really easy way to start kind of overhauling someone's health plan.
I completely agree with you. Most of the snacking that people do late night is on the snacky, carbohydrate based, highly processed, acellular, not
Yes,
they're not the
exactly.
vegetable stir fries and
Yeah.
salads and
Yeah.
soups that you had all day long.
Yeah. You're not having like salad, at 10 p.m. at night.
What advice do you give your clients or your patients who have a problem, have snack accidents late night? What do you have them do to avoid eating and really get into the practice of fasting at night?
Yeah. So when you start out, you will make mistakes, and I still make mistakes. I often don't eat enough dinner or whatever. And it's not a death. What I say is a lot of people will say, well, forget it. I'm just going to have like a pizza, late at night. And, I just can't. What I say is, hey, if you can try like a half a tablespoon of almond butter, or try like 40 calories of fat, something with fat in it. Because we know that fat is something that if you have it, it can still keep kind of the fasting processes, chemical processes going on. For example, something like autophagy, it gets turned off when they sense protein or carbohydrate, right? So if you are having a little bit of fat, you may be able to get some of the metabolic benefits of fasting still. And so I say start with that and then see how you feel, because sometimes just that is enough to satisfy you and you won't need anything else. Don't just go straight from, hey, I'm super starving and I'm just going to have a pizza. Forget it. I tell people take that small step in between, drink a tea, have something. I say no artificial sweeteners, but you could have some stevia. So you could have stevia lemonade. You could have a tea. You could have 40 calories of fat, and then wait and see how you're feeling before you go ahead and end that fast. And listen, we all fail. I fail all the time, because it's not like, you've still done a good job. Even if you end up having a small little meal here and there, it's not a big deal. What I say is that it's the regular practice of ending your snacking late in the evening that can help you in the long run.
Let's go back to, you used a big word, you used autophagy, and you said that fat is not going to end that process.
Right.
I'd love for you to explain the biochemical mechanisms behind that, explain what autophagy is for everyone listening. I love it. I like using fat, what I call fat fasting, as a way to keep ourselves out of the chip bag. So I'd love for you to explain it. You're the expert here.
Yeah. So autophagy actually means self-eating. That's like the literal term of what it means in Latin. It's our body's way of cleaning out damaged cells in order to regenerate newer, healthier cells. Okay. So it can kind of think about like a self-devouring process, although that sounds really bad, but really it's a great thing, because it's a huge, deep clean out of your cells. We think it's like an evolutionarily a self-preservation mechanism that our body has created to remove the dysfunctional cells and recycle the parts of the cells that need to be recycled and clean up that cell. So what happens once our cell goes through autophagy is, if you looked at it under the microscope, it actually looks like a younger cell, because how we age cells is through all the cellular garbage material that's present in the cell. So think about resetting cells in your body. I mean, who doesn't want to do that, for not only for the benefits of looking and feeling younger, but also really curtailing all the metabolic diseases that come with aging.
I love it. It's like a Pac-Man eating itself, or your desktop into your trash can on your computer and hitting empty.
And I know all the women in the audience are going to love this, but it's literally a way of turning the clock back and creating younger cells. I mean, I feel like that's like music to my ears.
So how do we create, or how do we allow for our body to go through the process of autophagy?
So you have to understand that there's always autophagy going on. Obviously, we're always trying to clean up ourselves. But the problem is autophagy declines as we age. So as we get older, they're no longer able to do autophagy at the level that they were when we were younger. So this is why diseases happen, we believe. Cancer, diabetes, heart disease. There's kind of like these defective cells, okay? So they actually think that autophagy or activating more autophagy can be so promising in so many diseases, including cancer, where you can say, hey, if we turned up the autophagy levels in people, maybe we can help them stave off these terrible life-threatening diseases. Okay. Obviously we don't know how to do that yet, per se with a pill or technique, but intermittent fasting, and fasting in general is an amazing way to turn up autophagy in your body. So, intermittent fasting, also ketogenic, diets all, have been known to trigger autophagy. I would say circadian fasting is like the fastest way, easiest way, to do this. And longer fasting and ketosis are also alternative ways to get into this autophagy state.
So how long with the longer fasting, how long do you need to be fasting before autophagy really ramps up? And can you explain how it works from a ketogenic standpoint?
Yes. So when I'll take the second part of your question first, which is ketogenic diets. So ketogenic diets happen when we are eating very, very low glucose levels. So say you deplete your body of glucose, the body will need energy from somewhere. So then it says, okay, the blood is depleted of glucose. Now let's go to the liver and take the stored glucose there, because we always have some stored glucose there. So once our body uses up the stored glucose there, they're going to have to metabolically switch. So the metabolic switching that happens, they say, okay, we ran out of quick, easy sugar. We need to get another source of energy. So what they do is they take the fat cell and they break up the fat cell and release the fat cell and use those fatty acids for energy. And that's the metabolic switching part of intermittent fasting and ketosis seems to be the magic, seems to be really good for the body to be able to switch fuel sources like that. And once you've switched to your fuel source, whether it's a short-term or long-term switch, your body starts to use fat as fuel.
And what do you think about fat as fuel when it comes to longevity and its metabolic byproducts? Do you recommend something like ketosis for women, just like intermittent fasting? Or yeah.
I think this is what I believe. I believe in being able to eat tons and tons of vegetables. And what I find in people who are following keto diets in general is that they're eating a lot of processed and unhealthy foods to keep themselves in ketosis. So I don't pressure people to stay in complete ketosis. It's very almost impossible. I mean, this is my opinion, obviously, but for me, as someone who is primarily plant-based, I find it really impossible to eat the vegetables and the food that I find that is really great for your gut and microbiome and also be in ketosis. And so what I say is that the busy woman's solution, which is basically is do plant-heavy diet, do circadian fasting, where you can get those benefits, but in a short-term fast. Get that metabolic switching happening by after you finish your, say, 12 to 16-hour fast overnight, you do a workout and really ramp up that autophagy, because a fasted workout is one of the best ways to ramp up autophagy. Now, we don't have an autophagy meter in our world.
I wish we did.
Yeah. How awesome would it be to just go and check like, okay, my autophagy, like people think that being in keto is being in autophagy, but it's not the same thing. We're constantly have autophagy going on. That's how we're cleaning up, and we just ramp it up with exercise. It gets ramped up with intermittent fasting. And so, there's really no way of knowing when that switch is happening. What I have started to do, which advanced fasters can consider, is doing a 24-hour fast, because I know that at around a 14, 16 hour, depending on how many carbs or how much sugar you've had in the last week, you start to ramp up that autophagy, and definitely at 24 hours, you ramp up that autophagy. So what I've started to do is once a month, I do this thing like a 24-hour fast. It's based on actually Mormon Sunday fast. So Mormon Sunday fast has been studied in many, many articles looking at the health benefits, and they found lower inflammation levels. They've had lower heart disease, huge differences. I mean, mortality benefit. And so what the Sunday fast, the Mormons do is once a month, they skip at least 2 meals in the day. So it's like you eat dinner, say on a Friday night, and then you wouldn't eat until dinner again on a Saturday night. And so it's like skipping 2 meals in between. And so often it ends up being about 24 hours. And that's a great way if you're an advanced faster and you've, to kind of say like, hey, I want to kind of ramp up that autophagy in my body. That's a strategy you can use.
That's great. I feel like once a month is attainable for people if they become metabolically flexible. I think that's the key, is understanding blood sugar, understanding glucose levels and insulin and ketone levels, even if you're using a ketometer, a glucometer, just so that you're not going from a high glycemic place and high blood sugar place to deciding that you're going to fast. And I feel like that can be really hard on people.
Yes. I think that's the biggest thing, is really getting metabolically flexible. If you can just do that part, oh my God, so many benefits start to happen.
Definitely. And I completely agree with you when it comes to doing ketosis the right way and really not foregoing the plants. There are so many times where people start writing off vegetables like carrots and beets and squash and all of these nature given, like phytochemical rich beauty foods, because they want to see their glucose levels, plummet, or ketone levels go skyrocket. So it's
and they'll have
tough.
Like a keto dessert, in place of like these amazing gut healthy plants. And I just feel like that can't be good for you in the long run.
Yeah. No, my favorite quote unquote keto dessert that's also great for your gut is just avocado and cacao whipped together in a blender. Like avocado mousse. So good.
Love it.
What are some of your favorite, I don't want to call them hacks, but tools for people who do have a sweet tooth, or who, want to indulge without creating inflammation in their body?
That's a great question. I have a total sweet tooth. So I'm Indian, and I grew up in a household where there was like snacks all day long. I think it was like, you had breakfast, but then you had a snack, and then you had a sweet after every meal. And it was really hard for me to switch away from that. And so I had to think of hacks or tricks or tips that I could give to myself and others. So one of the things I say, that's why I like circadian fasting, because I say, eat your dessert right after your dinner, early in the evening. And that way your body has a chance to kind of process all those, use up some of those, carbohydrates, and energy that you have consumed before bed. So that means like I will have, so what I do is I take Ghirardelli dark chocolate chips, some really high quality chocolate, Hue Kitchen, dark chocolate. I put it in the freezer, and I break off a piece, or I'll take the chocolate chips in a little bowl, and I will leave the room, meaning if I leave the kitchen, I don't tend to go back to get more. And so I just leave, and I enjoy the chocolate thoroughly. And I tell people I'm not like a big wine person at the end of the day, which is shocking, but I tell people that they could do that with a glass of wine. If you just savor it, enjoy it, have some downtime with it, and then be done. Then drink your water, brush your teeth, and be done for the evening. And so I think dark chocolate for me works really well. Sometimes it's for others, it's like a glass of wine. I also find that when I feel like snacking, and I love salty also. I have these, again, because of my South Asian background, we have these little bowls that fit in like a spice rack, like a little spice container. And they're like these tiny little bowls. I would say more like a bowl that you would use for nuts or something like that. And I fill it with
what do they call those trays in India? Like where you have
the circular spice trays with little bowls inside. I have no idea. Like when I try to explain
I know the exact size.
Yeah. And so that exact size, that little bowl, you can fit a good amount of like little snacks that you want. And sometimes if I'm really craving something salty and I want some chips, or I want something like an Indian snack that's salty, what I do is I fill it up and I walk away. And really, because just like you said, it's not about, you can never eat those foods. I think that if you make yourself like so stringent and you really deprive yourself, it's really mental. It puts a mental toll on you. And I think if you allow yourself to have some treats and just keep it under control, so you're not eating the whole bag, you're fine.
Yeah, I think that physical ramekin or a small bowl or something that allows you to portion without having to count or buy individual bags or whatever it may be, that can be really helpful. And the practice of leaving your kitchen, that's a great tool as well.
Yeah.
It's a great practice. You sort of touched on it, but I want to go over a couple of things. Alcohol and caffeine. So you mentioned that you drink tea and you mentioned that you don't drink wine. What are your thoughts on both of those categories?
I'm a fan of both. Okay. Let's be honest, the Mediterranean
everybody's
diet,
gonna love you.
No, but I'll be honest, the dose is the poison, Kelly, right? So like when you look at Mediterranean diets, you look at the blue zones, you look at the people who've lived longest and healthiest and happiest in the world. These are groups of people who enjoy alcohol, many of them. And some groups, do not, but I don't think that it's alcohol itself that's the problem. It's the dose and the reasons for using alcohol that's the problem in our society. So, if you require alcohol to wind down and to decompress and to feel better about your life, like that is a problem. That's a huge problem. Mm-hmm. But if you're asking me, is it healthy for you in small amounts? I would say yes. If you're not using it and abusing it for emotional reasons, I think that it can be very healthy. So for example, moderate alcohol use has been shown to be quite anti-inflammatory and can be used in something, it's quite low amount though. It's between 2 and 4 drinks, I think, for women a week, which is very little for many people. But that's what moderate is. To me, that's what moderate really means. And if you're constantly needing way more than that, that's a bad sign. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with staying in that low level.
Great. I'm sure my husband will really love listening to this podcast.
Is he a wine lover?
I'm an absolute lightweight. We will open a bottle of wine once a week or once every other week. We're not big drinkers at all, especially post Sebastian and when I was pregnant and before too. But he'll open a bottle of wine and I'll have a 3 to 4 ounce pour, and I'm a lightweight, so I'm giggly and a lot of fun after that. And then he'll finish the rest of the bottle. So
that's hilarious.
It's but it works because that's just all I need and that's all I want. And it's
that's perfect.
That's a little bit of fun.
That you're just kind of showing people that it is possible to, because sometimes I'll say this and people will say like, oh, that's impossible, or that's not something I can do. Or so if that's not something you can do, and for you, it just means like, a lot of alcohol or none, then I would say none is better, obviously.
Right.
And then with caffeine, it's kind of the same story. Caffeine is tea in particular, and coffee too. But I think tea gets kind of bunched, like grouped with coffee, but tea in particular, has so many antioxidants and, benefits beyond just what we know. It's anti-inflammatory. So tea and coffee are really great tools as well. And it's really ritualistic and it's really enjoyable and it raises happiness scores and all that stuff. So I think that as long as you're not going overboard and you're not, for me, I'm genetically very caffeine sensitive. And so I cannot have caffeine past noon. But that's me. There's people who can genetically handle a little bit more. So I would say between 1 and 3 cups a day is something I would say would be a safe amount for people.
Great. So as a tea drinker, what is the tea that you drink? And are you looking for like the highest polyphenol content, or is there, how are you choosing?
Okay, I'll be honest. I don't like green tea. I do drink it, on occasion, and I enjoy it on occasion. But that's not hitting the spot in the morning for me. Mm-hmm. I like a chai with like almond milk and like nutmeg and cinnamon and ginger and cardamom. And I love to make a spicy blend and just keep the spices all together in a bottle. And like, I just like throw it in there, with the tea. And I use a black, Kashmiri tea, which is like to make my, chai. I'm not really, I like tea at other times. Medicinal teas at all other times. But in the morning, I need that warm cup of like, I think like that cinnamony warmth is something I look forward to every morning. And I think that that's something that's, personal preference, but I found a lot of people relate to that. And then of course, green tea has like such amazing levels of antioxidants. It really is one of the healthiest teas you can drink. And so I try to incorporate that a couple times a week, but I do herbal teas as well. But I think that morning ritual tea for me, the chai, is like a non-negotiable.
So are you blending your own like organic ground spices? And then
yes,
we have to get that recipe and share it in the show.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
No, I think chai is delicious. It's like a snickerdoodle cookie in a cup.
Yes, exactly. It's literally the easiest, thing. Cinnamon, you could put anything you want really, but I always make sure I have cardamom, cinnamon, and ginger on board. And then everything else is like, if you have some like a tea, like the tea masala that my mom brings from India that often has like a black pepper even in it. And so it gives it like that spicy kick. It's really delicious.
Yum. It sounds, you're making me crave chai right now. So just a couple more questions before we close out today, because I know you have things to do, but you mentioned that you do fasted workouts in the morning. Is there a specific type of workout that you recommend? And what benefits can people see from that?
Yeah, fasted workouts is something that I am a huge fan of. So do you do fasted workouts, by the way?
Mm-hmm. That's my favorite. It makes me feel the best.
I think so too. And I think a lot of marathoners, the Kenyan marathoners come to mind. They do fasted workouts to train their body to metabolically switch as if they were in a marathon, where you're used up all the glucose. For me, the benefits are countless. So one is that it extends your fasting in the morning. So I like to do it first thing in the morning. 2, you ramp up autophagy when you do exercise. So not only are you extending your fasting, which is also ramping up autophagy, but you're also exercising, which is a second, like independent way to increase autophagy. And you're doing that kind of with circadian rhythm. So if you're out So for example, an outdoor walk first thing in the morning would kind of check off and all those boxes and would be a really great way to multitask. So meaning that you're optimizing your circadian rhythms by getting some natural sunlight first thing in the morning or, in the morning before 10 o'clock, and you are moving your body to increase autophagy. And then you're also fasted, which also increases autophagy. So then you've done a bunch of anti-aging regimens all in one. And you're done by the time you even get ready for the day.
I love it. You're getting more than a twofer. It's like a threefer.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, Dr. Shah, thank you so much for all of your time today and for giving us all of these amazing tips for women. I think from fasting to ketosis to fasted workouts, it can all be a little bit intimidating because there is so much mixed information out there. But you are a trusted source and a friend, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I love your stuff, Kelly. I'm so honored to be on here. And let's connect more in the future.
I would love that. So one last question before we go, and then you can tell everyone where they can find you and follow along. So the last question of the day is, what does body love mean to you?
Wow, that's a tough question. Body love to me is not necessarily being stagnant in your goals, but really loving what your body can do for you and where you're at right now, instead of always constantly craving for something more. It's being comfortable in your own skin and still working on it to optimize it.
I love that. Always looking to grow and be better every single day.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, where can we follow along?
Yeah, come. I'm often found on Instagram at FastingMD. So I talk about intermittent fasting, gut health, all the updates of the COVID virus today. Everything and anything health related is often on my Instagram page. I also have Twitter and Facebook, and my website is amymdwellness.com.
Awesome. And I did see on your website you have some courses so people can learn how to fast.
Yeah, exactly. We do a guided 2-week fasting program, which kind of goes handholds and helps people through the kind of circadian fasting and eating that I talked about with you.
Awesome. Well, if you guys loved what you heard and you're interested in learning more, definitely head to her website, check out those courses, and follow along on Instagram. Oh, such a good episode. Thanks, Amy. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.